So today's webinar, we are going to be talking about NIBRS reporting. We're going to be focusing more on sort of your day-to-day, week-to-week, and really your month-to-month with NIBRS. So what are most departments doing for their month-to-month reporting, or what's some advice for getting that going, kind of getting into the swing of things with that. That's what I wanted to kind of focus on today. One other thing before we jump into that, we are going to go over, I just want to touch on the crime code setup. That is always something that you want to kind of keep in mind and keep track of as you're going through your NIBRS reviews, making sure your crime codes are set up with the right information. So let's go ahead and jump in. That first part that I was talking about, we'll want to go into our setup menu. And then once we're in there, we're going to go to our crime and incident codes here. So if I go in here, I can choose a crime and incident code. If I'm modifying multiple ones, so maybe I want to change all of these aggravated assaults to be something else, I can bulk edit them. So I can click on that, go through all four, and make a change to all four of them. But really, I'm just going to click on one, and I want to point out the main fields to pay attention to here. Now, with different states, there's going to be different fields that you have to worry about. Some states have state offense codes that you have to worry about. Some states have NIBRS additional codes. But for the most part, every state in the U.S. that's reporting NIBRS, they all have to follow two fields exactly the way that we have them. One is going to be the NIBRS offense. So that'll be the first field you want to pay attention to. If you've never seen it before, we have a NIBRS offense code list on our support site, help.arms.com. So you can log in there and go search for the NIBRS offense code list, or email us and we can send it to you. You can also get that list from the FBI NIBRS manual too. But that'll have all of your crime codes and what code goes with them. It's just a 3-character code for every single one. So you'll see this one is a 13A, and that goes with an aggravated assault. They kind of work together. So a 13B is a simple assault, and then a 13C would be intimidation or stalking or something like that. So 13A is aggravated, 13B is simple, 13C, and you can kind of see the pattern there. All right, so first thing, you want to make sure your NIBRS offense code is correct here. And then down below, you want to make sure your crime against is correct. So there's only going to be one of these. You're never going to have a code with more than one checked. It's always just going to be one crime against. Crime against person is really anything where a person gets hurt. So an aggravated assault, a simple assault, and maybe not even hurt, because stalking, it's just going to be where there's a person that is the victim. Now, down here, crime against property, that's going to be anything where a property is involved, whether that property is stolen, whether it's recovered, whether it is, arson, damaged. So that would be arson, vandalism, larceny, thefts, burglaries, robberies, anything that involves property like that. That would be considered a crime against property. And then the last one is going to be crime against society, and that's going to be where there's not really a victim that you can see. And so usually that's going to be like a drug charge in here. And then Jason Worth, I didn't know if you had joined yet or not. Okay. If you could check out the chat too. I saw someone was having trouble hearing, and let me know if there's anything going on with that. Okay, perfect. All right, and then we've got, okay, so those are the crime against. Sorry about that. So jumping back in here, the two main things you want to focus on are the NIBRS offense code, 13A, and then crime against property, person, or society. So for this one, 13A is the aggravated assault, crime against person is the crime against code. So that's the main thing. There's a couple other things that you can do from the setup side, but the code list is one that you will always want to kind of keep track of. Make sure that you update it if any new codes are added too. Now, let's jump into the main focus of this. So like I said, this is going to be more of how to, keep track of your NIBRS reporting in the system. And I want to use this as sort of a way to look at it through the admin or the supervisor view of how NIBRS usually looks like at a department. It's, of course, going to vary between departments, but this is what we normally see and what we suggest to users. And that's going to be to have a supervisor or an admin that goes through and just checks every month for these NIBRS reviews. The officers, what they're adding into the system is already going to be able to be used to import and fill out the NIBRS review itself. So your job should be just going in, starting the NIBRS review and making sure everything looks good in there. Now, the first part of that is going to be, there's actually two ways to do it. One way I suggest it is going to be in Report Center right here. So if you come into Report Center, go down to NIBRS, click on Canned Reports, and we'll go to Code Comparison. This is going to be a report that really helps you out whenever you're going through and submitting your monthly data. And that's something I guess I didn't point out, but you do want to submit once a month. So if we come to our code comparison, you'd want to put in a full month of data. So go through and search for the month. And you can do this every day. Just make sure you're up to date with it. You can do it weekly, or you can do it once a month and make sure that your month looks good. So I'm going to hit apply in there. And what this will do is it'll give you a report with two columns. One is going to show you any case report that you have in the system that has a NIBRS reportable code. So from that code setup, that crime code setup we just looked at, that is where this side is going to come from. So I've got one case right here with an aggravated assault on it. I've got another case right here with a simple assault, one with the larceny, and one with drugs. So the left side shows you any case reports that have a NIBRS reportable crime code. The right side shows you any case reports that have a NIBRS review filled out. So out of these case reports over here, which ones already have a NIBRS review filled out? So right here we've got two that are already filled out, and we need to go through and take care of these other two. Now, one other trick before we move on from this, one thing to pay attention to, on this side, this will also show 90 codes. So 90A, 90B, 90C, or otherwise known as Group B offenses. This would be like a bad check or disorderly conduct or driving under the influence or something like that. The code itself will start with a 90. So it would be a 90A, 90C, and so on. Those codes you only have to report if there was an arrest made. So if there was no arrest made, it'll still show up in this list, but that doesn't mean you have to fill out a NIBRS review. You only have to fill out a NIBRS review for a 90 code if there was an arrest made. All right. So you use this list, and this gives you sort of a list of case reports you need to go do. So other than that, though, if we come back to our home screen, a second way to do this, and this is actually kind of the newer way, is if we go into our cases, this will bring us to our detail view, which is going to be in the newer versions of ARMS. And in the detail view, you'll see a little bit more about the case before you actually jump into the case. And here you've got a NIBRS review option, or where this, basically, if you click on it, it would take you to the NIBRS review for this case. And you'll see I've got a green checkbox next to this one. If I come down to this next one, I've got a red plus symbol. Same for this one, red plus symbol. This one's got a green checkbox. The red plus symbol in there is essentially telling you this case report does not have a NIBRS review filled out, and it needs one. The fact that that plus is red means that you do need to fill this one out, meaning it does have a NIBRS reportable code on it. If the plus symbol was not red, that means that the incident that you have in here is not a NIBRS reportable code, and you don't have to fill out a NIBRS review. And then, of course, you can probably guess the checkbox means that a NIBRS review is filled out for that one. All right, so that's the other way. You can use the Report Center report, the NIBRS code comparison report, or you can come into the detail view and see which ones are missing a NIBRS review just by clicking through them. Oh, didn't mean to click on that one. Or you can use both. So let's go ahead and jump into one. This is one of the ones from our NIBRS code comparison report. So like I said, I want to look at this the way that you would look at it as a supervisor or as an admin, how you'd want to look at it. And essentially what you would do here is just check and make sure that the officer filled out certain fields and then go into the NIBRS view. So I first want to go through and just kind of look at all the fields that an officer can fill out to help you out. That way, you know if you know to go and let the officers know if they're not filling out a certain field in the report, you'll want them to fill it out just to help with the NIBRS review process. So on the face page, the only ones to really pay attention to are going to be the occurred from and occurred to dates and times, or the date reported. So any dates right here, you want to make sure that those are filled out. And the location does come into play. It comes into play where you can actually add it in afterwards, but I'll show you where that pulls in. So on the face page, you want to pay attention to the date reported, occurred from and to dates, and the location. We'll go down to the incident tab, and we're going to come down and look at the actual incident right here. So if I click in the incident details, this is one that changes within the department depending on how you want to handle it. You can have officers just put in the incident right here and click done. So you could have an officer put in simple assault and click done. Or some departments will ask the officers to go through and just fill out any information down below that applies to this one. And it's just as simple as using, your experience during the call to answer these questions. So going through them, you've got domestic violence. So was this domestic violence related or senior citizen involved? Weapon type. Some of those don't have to do with NIBRS specifically, so I'm going to skip some of those. But here we've got type of weapon and force involved. So I've got personal weapon, hands, feet, teeth checked, but you can select up to 3. So if any weapons or force were involved in this, the officer can fill that out. And I do want to point out that these fields do come in later during the NIBRS review. So if you don't want the officers to fill these out, you can fill these out later. Then you've got type of criminal activity. So just seeing if any of these apply. Was there a gang involved? Were they possessing or concealing drugs? Attempted and completed. So did they attempt to do this or did they complete it? This is normally going to be involved with burglaries or larcenies or any kind of theft. Because there you can track, did they attempt to steal something but they actually didn't, or did they attempt to steal something and they did steal it? That would be completed. Then your location type. Remember, I told you from the location on the face page, since they put that in, it automatically popped in the location type here, or they can just select it from the list, whatever applies. The bias motivation. So was there any kind of motivation behind this crime? And then down here, these two are very unique, and I'll explain this for you. Method of entry, you only have to put this in if your code up here is a burglary. So if your incident is a burglary, then you would put in if it was forcible or non-forcible. So did they have a key to get in or did they just break in? And then you've got number of premises entered. This only applies if your location type is hotel, motel, / etc. or rental storage facility. So if it's a burglary and the location is a hotel, motel, etc., or a rental storage facility, that is the only time you would put in the number of premises entered. And then down here, you would put in the offender suspected of using. Were they using alcohol, drugs, or computer equipment for this crime? And was there any gang involvement? So going through those sounds like a lot, just walking through each of them one at a time. But honestly, for an officer going through here, it does help with the NIBRS review process, and the officers usually know all of these answers. Going through, they know what kind of weapon was involved and can select that. They know if someone actually did steal property or if they just attempted to, if it was a hate crime, and what the location is. And again, if you do choose to not have your officers fill this out, you can fill this out during the NIBRS review process too, and I'll show you that. Let's hit done. We'll say that the officer did fill out that information. You can see all the fields that I put in there. We'll come down to the name section. So of course, the officer is going to add the names and the involved parties to this. They can also add in for a victim. If they hit modify on the victim, they can choose what offense the victim is assigned to or is a part of. So this victim was a part of a simple assault, and that's the only crime on this case. So this one's pretty easy. And then it actually lets you know, if I remove this, it lets the officer know the type of injury is required if they choose simple assault. So they need to put in some kind of injury there. And save. Again, those are fields that you can ask the officer to fill out, or you can fill those out during the NIBRS review process. Now let's go ahead and jump into the NIBRS review process. So we looked at the face page, incidents, and names. Now we're going to go into this review. Since this is a crime against person, we don't have any property, and we don't have to worry about society. So we'll click on Start New Review. We've got our field right here. We can save this, see if anything applies. Nothing we need to do on this page. We'll come down to offense. We can look at our offense and see that the location type, the bias motivation, weapon or force involved, all of that pulled in from what the officer entered. And you can hit save and close. If you're ever missing anything in here, the system will let you know. You can hit save and close, and it'll let you know if there's something required to be added, or else you would get an error in your NIBRS review. It would let you know that you can't submit it without entering something specific. So no property for this one. Since it's not a crime against property, it won't even let you click the add button. You would have to have a crime against property to add a piece of property. We'll come down to victim. Look in here, we see that the victim is connected to that 13B for simple assault, and it has a type of injury. Again, all from what the officer put in. Now, let's say same thing. Whenever the officer had that, had it just like this, they got a message saying that there needed to be a type of injury. If I try and save this without the type of injury, same thing. It'll let me know I need to have a type of injury before I can save. So that's what I mean. The system's going to keep you from making any errors when you submit NIBRS. It's going to kind of check to make sure you're not doing anything that would not go through the submission process. All right, offender is my favorite one. There's nothing you have to do in here. So you come in here, save, and you're done. And the last thing you will need to do on some of these, usually, if there's ever a victim and an offender that are both individuals, or the offender is unknown, but as long as if your victim is an individual or a law enforcement officer, you will have to put in a relationship to the offender. Got this in here. There we go. So victim was acquaintance, and we'll hit save and close. Now we don't have an arrestee, So the last thing, and keep this in mind, every time you finish an NIBRS review, the last thing you want to do is always hit the Validate All button. That will go through the system and check and make sure there's no errors. So if we don't have a victim-offender relationship, I know for sure that we have to have one in here. So if we're missing that and we hit Validate All, it's going to check through and let you know that we have to add in a victim-offender relationship. There we go. Save that. Now if we hit Validate All, no errors found. So this one's good. If we go back to that Report Center report that we were running before, remember to get there, we'll go into Report Center, NIBRS, Code Comparison, NIBRS, Canned Reports, and Code Comparison. Let's run that same date range. And now you'll see you've got your simple assault right here, and it shows that we filled out an NIBRS review for that. All right, next we'll want to look at this larceny theft. So I've got that one to open over here. And so in here, again, we'll look at our dates, our common name, our location, come down to incidents. This one's marked as completed. Remember, this would apply more for this one than anything else because this larceny theft, someone could have attempted to steal something, but they didn't. Now for this one, we'll come down to the name section. We've got our victim in here, and we've got our victim connected to the NIBRS offense code. And for this one, we do have to add a property. So it's a little bit different than the last one. We come in here. I'm going to click on, we'll just do edit. So we've got a property category of stolen, a property type of closed, and then the only thing you have to add in is the value. So if it was stolen, how much was it that was stolen? What was the value of that? Now you can also add in if it was recovered, the recovered dollar value. So maybe you only recovered half, so it'd be 150. And you can add in the recovery date. This would automatically pull in that recovered part for you. So we'll save that. The officer would add in that piece of property just like they normally would, even without the NIBRS review. And we'll come to NIBRS, hit Start New Review. Now for this one, we do need to add a cargo theft. It only applies for anything that is a theft in the system. So for this one, like cargo theft, we'll put yes or no. For this one, I'm just going to put no. NA means that it's an offense that has nothing to do with theft. So that's why simple assault, we just kept it as NA. Come down to our offense. Everything looks good in here. We didn't really change anything other than location type and completed. So what the officer put in works. We'll hit save. Come down to property. This is what we added in there. Stolen, closed, value of 300. Now, one other thing in here, if you ever have a stolen piece of property and you recover that property, you do need to add a separate box. So we've got stolen here. We'll want to add in another. And instead of stolen, this time we're going to choose recovered. And we'll put the exact same thing in here. So it will be clothes and furs, and then how much of the clothes and furs did you get back? So we had 300 stolen, maybe we only recovered 150 worth. And then put the date recovered. Again, if you put this in the property on the case, it will import in as well. So it would come in and create two, let me save this. It would create both of these boxes, stolen and recovered, with the values that you put in there. And before we leave out of here, the last section I want to show you in here is the stolen MV and recovered MV. You can only put this if your property description is some type of automobile. So MV stands for motor vehicle. And if your property description is a type of automobile, you would put in just the number that was stolen. And then in your recovered section, you would put in the number that was recovered. the number of motor vehicles that was recovered. All right, so we'll come down. We've got our victim right here. I'll click in there, but there's nothing really we need to do since we have the officer putting in the connected offense. We'll save that. For the offender, we have an unknown offender. What we need to do here is just click to add a completely unknown offender. And that's all for that one. Just click the add button and you've got that. Now, this is one weird thing that the FBI requires, is that even if the offender is unknown, since your victim is an individual, you have to put a relationship. But there's not actually a relationship you need to put. Just click the add button. It'll be blank and just hit save. But that's exactly what they want you to do. All right, no arrestee on this one. We'll hit save, or excuse me, validate all. Of course, the last thing we want to do, validate all, no errors found, so we're good on that one. And the last one I want to jump in with you is a crime against society. So you may notice we did a crime against person with the simple assault, crime against property with this larceny theft, and then before we let you guys go, I want to jump in and do the final one, the crime against society. So this is going to be a drug charge. If we come up, we've got our dates. We've got a drug narcotics violation and a drug equipment violation. We've also got it marked as offender suspected of using drugs. We've got our arrested person right here. And this is an important one. Once the officer adds the arrest in here as well, this will import into ARMS, or the NIBRS review. So I've got the arrest over here. I've got my arrest date and time, got the officer who did the arrest, and what type of arrest it was. So this was an on-view arrest, and I've got the arrest location. So where were they located during the arrest? And then the only other field in the arrest that you need to look at is the charges. So, of course, drug, narcotics, and drug equipment. All right, then we'll jump back. We've got our arrest on here. And the only other thing for the drug charge that you need is your two types of property. So drugs, narcotics is the property. Evidence is your category. Drug, narcotics is the type. And for this one, you do need to put in the measurement. So 5 grams and what the suspected type is. So 5 grams of cocaine. And if there was any equipment used, you would want to add the equipment as a piece of evidence too. So evidence, drug, narcotic equipment. And you can also add a value of 1. It'll just let you know that that's required. All right, so let's come back down. This NIBRS review I've already started, so I'm going to jump into the NIBRS review record and just make sure everything looks good. Nothing we need to do on the first page. We've got our offenses already imported in. Our property, let's click on that just to check and see. The drug, narcotic equipment, drugs and narcotics, and our cocaine, 5 grams. And they get very particular about the values here. Just remember, it'll always have to be blank, but even if you don't remember that, if you put in 0, the system will let you know that that 0 is not okay. Value of property cannot be 0 if it's any kind of drugs. So make that blank, and we'll hit save. We've got our victim of society right here. That just pulls in since drugs, narcotics is a crime against society. You can see it automatically connects the two. We've got our offender. We don't need to put an offender relationship because it's society and an offender. And also you can see the add button is grayed out. So it's, again, the system letting you know that you don't need this in here. And then finally, the last part is going to be the arrestee. So we'll click on the arrestee section. It pulls in the type of arrest, pulls in the transaction number just based off the arrest booking number, and pulls in the information about the arrestee. The only two fields that aren't touched that you might ever have to look at are, one, arrestee under 18. You would need to choose if it was handled within the department or referred to other authorities, or if you're in Ohio, you have the option of none. And then this multi-arrest segment indicator, this one's a little tricky. What this is if there are multiple cases all related to one arrest. So maybe you have 5 or 6 burglaries that happened. Then you find out it was the same person for all of the burglaries. For one of these arrestees on the NIBRS review, you would click count arrestee. And then the other ones, you would just mark them. The other 4 burglaries would just have a multiple, and just make sure your arrestee transaction number is the same, which it should be. If you've got the same booking number on the arrest for each of them, then it should all be the same there. All right, so let's save and close. And again, the last thing you want to do before ending any NIBRS review is hit validate all. That'll go through, no errors found, and we are good to go for this one. Before we wrap up, we can go to the NIBRS code comparison again in Report Center. Search our date range, and now we see that all of the crimes have been done for this month. So they've been reviewed for this month. All right. And then finally, the last thing that you would end up doing once you're done with the month, and this varies by state, so we won't dive too deep into it, but this is where you would go into case management right here and go to your NIBRS data extract. And again, if you have any questions on how your state specifically, how to submit your submissions, just let us know. You can email us at support@arms.com or give us a call, and we can help you with the data extract. But essentially here, you would come in, put in your date range. So I want to pull in my month. You can put in comments. And then you'd hit extract. It would pull those 4 reports that I have. And then you'd hit continue. What this would do is check through your reports and see if there's any errors with any of them, and just let you know. It'll give you an error report and tell you. I know we did 3 of these, so I'm not sure about this number 23 one. That was just a testing one I did a while ago. So let's see if it gives me an error or not. All right, so that did extract with error, or errors in there, but it's probably just that one that I did before this. But it would give you the error message, and you can come in, click on that one, and then you'd be able to pull the errors text. That would let you know what is missing from the reviews in the system, and you would be able to go in and fix them just based off of the data that you got in there. Once you've fixed those, then you would get your own report to pull off, and I can pull one of these too. So you get a report that looks just like this, and this is what you would submit to the state. Some departments can now submit straight from ARMS, and some have where they would have to submit different or a different file for each. It all depends on the state. That's why I say just reach out to us if you have a question on it. But for the most part, you'd come here, pull your file, and then submit it to your state for submission. And that would be kind of the monthly process. Having your officers go through and fill out case reports normal on a day-to-day basis. And then most departments on, say, the 5th of the month, go back through the last month's data and make sure using that Report Center report, NIBRS code comparison, going through and just making sure all the NIBRS reviews are filled out. All right. Well, that is it from my side of things. Jason, are you still there? Did you fall asleep?
Mostly asleep, but I'm waking up now.
All right, so I'm going to pass it over to you guys. So if you guys have any questions for us, I know I saw some coming through beforehand. Jason, was there any good questions that that came in before, or anyone, and while Jason's answering this, if you have any other questions, go ahead and put them in the chat.
Yeah, a main question that came in during the actual session there was just a question of, filling out a NIBRS review versus filling out a Clery review. And while Clery review and NIBRS review, they sound similar, they're a little bit of two different beasts. Your NIBRS review is going to be a lot longer. There's a lot of steps. There's a lot of fields involved with the NIBRS review itself. Your Clery review is still going to do the same functionality. It's going to leverage the data that's in your case report. But it is only a couple steps to document the items you need for that to stat that correctly. A lot of times what we'll see is departments will have a Clery coordinator or somebody that's in charge of doing the Clery reviews, and that's not necessarily always the same person as the NIBRS coordinator. So those are two different steps. Those are two different reviews. They're two very different reporting platforms, but you can see both of those from that main case screen to see if there is data required, whether it be Clery related or NIBRS. We've got a question from Joanne. Under stolen, if you don't know the amount, can you put in $0? What property code do you use for an athletic shoe?
Generally, Joanne, for any value that you're unsure of, the FBI asks that you put in the dollar value of 1. They don't think that it actually means that it costs $1 or was $1. It's basically them saying, or them knowing that that $1 stands for, we're not sure.
Yeah. And Devin, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the $1 applies to some things that don't have dollar values. Like, what is the dollar value for like the ID, stolen identification, and stuff like that?
Some of those are going to be 0. In ARMS, it kind of tells you. I don't have them. Sadly, I don't have them memorized. But I know like drug equipment in the system is just $1. So they require it to be $1 because it has a value, but it's not an actual value. Things like credit cards would be 0, just because technically credit cards have no value. It's the money on them that have the value. So if the credit card was stolen, you would put it at $0, and then underneath that you would put how much money was stolen from that credit card.
Yeah. And then the other question we usually get when we're talking about property value is when it comes to kidnapping, because there is a requirement to have property listed for a kidnapping. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so kidnapping is going to be based off of ransom. So if it's going to say if someone requires a ransom on a kidnapping, that would be the value in there. If there is no ransom involved, if there's no money involved with that, then you would just put that it was either the money was a $0 value or it was just an attempted kidnap in there.
But is not looking for the value of the child or the cost of the shoes on their feet, or
right.
We've heard some other random ones too in the past. So.
And Joanne, real quick for your other question in there, athletic shoes would just be closed/furs too.
Good question though, Joanne.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
And I do know while we were typing, I'll just kind of talk, but I know we went through a lot of different things in the NIBRS reviews today. If you guys have any questions that come up later, feel free to reach out on those.
Yeah. And we will have a copy of this webinar on our support site usually by the end of the week. They'll all be posted to help.arms.com. So if you ever need to get access to any of those, they will be there.
And I mentioned this at the beginning too. I'm not sure if everyone was there. If you go to help.arms.com and log in, you'll be able to see the video posted. We'll send out an email too on Friday with a link to the video. If you have a login to the support site, you can see it just by logging in. If someone does not have a login, like Eric, you mentioned your sergeants, if they don't have a login, you can click the share button on that YouTube video or that, the link that's on there. If you click the share button and copy it, you can send that to them in an email and they won't need a login to be able to view it.
They're not publicly listed, but they're not hidden either. So you
Right.
can still share that link around as long as it's the YouTube link. Make sure it's a YouTube link and not a end-to-end.freshdesk.com link. That's all you got to really make sure. Cool. Any other questions? All right.
Yep, I don't see any either. All right, well, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Again, if you guys have any questions, please reach out to us. Help.arms.com gets you there. You can email support@arms.com. You can call us at 1-800-776-6783. But otherwise, we will talk to you guys later, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for your time, everybody.